V'hinei, al ze nemar, v'asisem es kol mitzvoisoi v'yisem kedoshim, that when you do my mitzvahs, then you become kedoshim, because through the mitzvahs, you reach up to the level of kodesh ha'elyon. V'al ze omar, and about this is what it says, yochel kamoyni, kedoshim to you, kedoshim to you. So the pasuk says, yochel kamoyni, that you may think that the kedusha that you get through the Torah mitzvahs, v'yisem kedoshim, it'll lead you to the kedusha kamoyni, like the kedusha of the Eibishter. Talmud loymar, ki kodesh ani, that kedushasi is the ma'ila mikdushascha, that your kedusha is higher than my kedusha is higher than your kedusha, because the area where the mitzvahs reach, the kedusha is not the level of kodesh itself. Pirush. Kagam shal yidei hamitzvahs magiyim va'olim ad b'chinas eira keser. Even though that through the mitzvahs we reach and we go up to the level of keser, light of keser, mikol makom, dushasi l'maylo. Still, my kedusha is higher than that. The kedusha from the Eibishter is higher than the kedusha of keser even. But the Alter Rebbe asks, but even that, what's the chiddush? But even now that you're saying that the Yidden reached the level of keser through the Yisim Kedoshim and through the Maitzah Mitzvahs, we still don't understand what is he coming to teach us over here? Vada Yedua Shebechinas HaKeser K'moikein K'loi Choshiv L'gabe Atzvus Ein Sof Baruch Hu is equally also considered nothing like by the Atzvus Ein Sof, which basically means, okay, so what about that it's Keser? So it is Keser, but still, even Keser is also relative to Atzvus Ein Sof. Why? Shehu Yizborech Nikra Oisei Pella. Hashem is called, he makes the Pella. The Pella is a reference to Keser. And by Hashem, it's an Asiyah. Hainusha Keser, Shu Pella Elyon. A Keser, which is considered to be the supreme Pella, is Kasiyah Gashmish Choshu Vetzlo Yizborech. Relative to Hashem, it's like an Asiyah. Vimkein Kedoshos Yizborech L'mayla in Ketz Al Kedusha Seinu. So the blessed Kedusha of Hashem, the Yizborech, the blessed Kedusha, is way higher, endlessly over Kedusha. Afilu la'achar aliyus haneshama b'kodesh al-keser. Even after we talk about the neshama going up into Keser, but it's obvious that relative to the Kedusha Yizborech from Hashem himself, is even after it goes up into the level of Keser, it's much higher. So why do we have to say Yochel Kamayni, Talmud Loimar? No, that the Eibish's Kedusha is higher. The idea is Ki Hine Yodua, the Bechinas Malchus de Insof Naser Keser Netzol. That the level of Malchus of Insof, that becomes the Keser for the Netzolim, which means even the Netzolim, I'm talking Nivroim later on, level, becomes the Keser. But they're a cloud. And in a general way, Bechinas HaKeser, who Bechinas Memutza, Ben Atzmus Ein Sof LeNetzolim. Keser is considered to be an intermediary in between the essence of the Ein Sof and the Netzolim, those who have been separated into Netzolim. And we know that the Memutza has the lower level of the Maitzil, That's the level of Atik. And it also has the root of the Netzolim. That's the level of Arikapi. So Atik is the lower level of the Maitzil, and Arich is the upper level, the Sherish and Netzol. The level of Atik Yomin, the Yoisoi, Bechinas Ein Sof, because it is Ein Sof, it's infinite, that's the level of the Maitzil. He's higher and higher, much higher than the level of Arich Ampin, which is the root of the Netzol. Atik. That's what we call him Atik. Why do we call it Atik? Atik means removed, or Loshe in the Pasuk, Hamatik Horim, the one who moves mountains, which means Shenetak v'nivdal me'vchinas hanetzolim, he's removed and he's distinguished, he's separate from love and soul. Even though it is the lower level of the Ein Sof, it's stuck at the lower level, but yet we call Mokoim hu l'maylo maylo, but yet he's higher and higher, laying kids endlessly, m'sherish hanetzolim, from the root of Netzolim. So even though that Atik is the lower level of the Ein Sof, but it's infinitely higher than Arich, which is the Sherish of Netzolim. Mitzvahs, we go up to the level of Keser, as I said before. And that's why it says Yochel Kameni. What does it mean, Yochel Kameni? It doesn't mean to say like the essence of Hashem Kamoini Mamish. He's talking about the Eirin Sof in Keser, which is the level of Atik Yom. That's the low level of the Maitzl. That's what he's talking about. Atik Yomim Atik Yomim in general is part of Keser. So it's still, even though it's infinitely higher than Arich, but it's still part of the Keser. So Yochel Kamoini. So you might think it's like when the Yidden do mitzvahs, they reach into Arich, maybe it's like Atik, because Atik is also part of Keser. That's why he says Talmud Loimar ki Kodesh Anichud. No. Kaidei ha mitzvahs aliyah b'chinas arichampim. Mitzvahs is aliyah is in the level of arichampim. Ki taryag mitzvahs nimshochim taryag orchim de galgalto, because the 613 mitzvahs extend from the 613 passageway of the skull. V'zehu b'chinas kodesh ha'elyin shalamaylam b'chinas kodesh kinal barichus. That is the level of Kodesh Ha'elyin, that's Kodesh, which is higher than the Kodesh that is Nimshach into the world. Avol B'chinas Atik Yomin, but the level of Atik Yomin, Al-Zeh Omar, about that he says, Nemar Kedushos Yelamaylo, that my Kedusha is higher than your Kedusha. That's on the level of Atik Yomin. Zehu Inyan HaMelech HaKodesh, Emri Maseres Yemei Tshuva. This is, we say in the Seres HaMelech HaKodesh, Hashem is always a Melech. But when we talk about Seres Tshuva, we're talking about HaMelech HaKodesh, Shu B'chinas Malchus de Ein Sof. That's we're talking now the level of Malchus of Ein Sof. Shu B'chinas Kedushosi Shalamaylam Kedushascha. That is the level of Kedusha, which is higher than your Kedusha, which is higher than the level of Keser that the Yidden come to. Okay, because we are in the higher level. Okay, Ozman Hatikun. That's why that is the time of correction. The malo is kolabgomim shenasu al yidei ha'avonos v'achatoyim, to fill all the blemishes that have been made by the sins, mistakes. Since this kedusha that is revealed during the 10 days of tshuva is the source for the sanctity of the mitzvahs, and it's much higher than it. Al kain yesh biyicholto lahamshich mokir hakedusha michodesh. That's why it is her ability at that level to bring down the source of kedusha again, and to fill in all blemishes and all lackings, etc. This is also the idea. We make a bracha on all mitzvahs. We do a bracha. Is lahamshich lebechinas kedushas mitzvahs. That is in order to bring down to the kedusha of the mitzvahs, which is shu kedushas hakeser, which is kedusha hakeser mi bechinas malchus de insof shu bechinas kedushos yishalomad kedushas nemchudah. To bring down into the Kedusha Kesser, the higher level of Kedusha, the Kedushos Yishalomad Kedushas. V'ayim Hashekosu b'mokem achar al posik v'eschano. Shabirchas HaMitzvahs, over there he says that Shabirchas HaMitzvahs u'mebichinas isarusa de la'ela shemeleho ma'atzmo. That's the level of the arousal of below, which is on its own, it is aroused. That then through that independent on its own arousal of above, so therefore that when you do the mitzvah, you'll be able to be misoider, bring the rusa leila. So you first have the rusa leila on its own, that's the bracha, and then when you do the mitzvah, you get another Isarus of the Leila, but that comes already through the Isarus of the Tato, through the Maisa Mitzvah. Ein Shom. That's why this fits very well, that this comes from the level of Kedushosi, the higher level. So it's explained elsewhere. Pirush Yochel Komeini, Talmud Loimar Kedushos L'Mayim L'Shascha. So over there it explains that Sheyeshi Saruso Delatelo Shenimshechas Adei Yisruso Delatato. There is an Yisruso Delatelo, an arousal above that extends through the arousal below. V'hu, and that is Hanimshech Adei Ma'isa Mitzvahs. That is through the act of mitzvah, shabi saruso dilatato, doing the mitzvah. That's the saruso dilatato, nimshach saruso dilayla. That comes through dilayla. V'zehu inyan kedushas. That is the kedusha of the yid that he attains through the mitzvahs. Yes, saruso dilayla, koydem saruso dilatato. Saruso dilayla that comes before is dilatato, and that is the purpose. That is lahalis mimata lemaila, to bring up from below to above, so that the Sarusa de Latata should be able to be made. The Sarusa de Elozu, Gedoilo Maloso Me'oid, that level of Sarusa Leila is advantage is so much greater, but also shall Yidei Sarusa de Latata than the Sarusa de Leila that comes from a Surus Tata. This Surus Leila that comes from is much greater. Because She'ena Surus Tata Yochel Agilachul. Surus Tata cannot reach this higher level. That comes on its own. This is what they say, Kedushosi Shalamailo Migidushascha. That higher level of Kedusha. And in Kain, Birchas HaMitzvah She'ibchinis Surus Leila Zu. So therefore, when we say Birchas HaMitzvahs, which is the arousal of this level of Kedushosi L'mayla Migdushascha, Shorsho, that is Mimchinas Kedushosi. This does not conflict, does not contradict that will be explained over here. The Pirush, Kedushosi, Hainu b'chinas atik yomim malchus ein sof. We were talking here about malchus ein sof, the level of atik yomim atik. Ki shoydesh isarusa de le'ela zu in nimsheches be'emes b'chinas atik yomim malchus ein sof. Take it comes from the malchus ein sof atik yomim. It comes. Elo shebebirchas hamitzvos hamshochu rak kidei liyos al yidei zeh b'isarusa de l'tate isarusa le'eluchu. Over there, it's only that through this is I'm a shekosu v'aposik l'susosi gabashiri ashiri. Avo ba'aseres. So l'cheira, I think what he's asking over here we're saying a special time aseres you made tshuva. That's when you get the gilui of atik yoimim. You get the gilui of this dushasi shalamayla malchus dein sof. And here we're talking about Birchas HaMitzvahs, also a similar idea, that they get the higher level. But he says, on Seres Yemei Tshuva is a different madrege. Over there we're talking about, only what is necessary in order, the Birchas HaMitzvahs is only to bring down the Serusa de La'ela as it's necessary, so that when you do a mitzvah, you should be able to get the other Serusa de La'ela. That's the extent of the Yisarus Leil that comes from above. Avo ba'aseres yemei tshuva she'emrim hamelech hakodesh. But I said Melech hakodesh ugilui godel mebchina zu. That's a big revelation from this level. The malis kol hapegomim shenasu b'Yisarus letato. That if you didn't really do the Yisarus letato, and also because if the Serusa Latata wasn't proper, it didn't bring down the Serusa Leila properly. Therefore, we need to have also the Sarusa, that's what we do, the Seres Yemei Tshuva, to fill in all the gap. Base. Zehu inyan ke'eretz Totzie Tzimcha. This is the idea, the psuk, Kaerets, Totzie Tzimcha, v'chagina, tatzmiach. The psuk says over there, Kein Hashem elikim yatzmiach tzedakah tehila neged kol hagoyim. So the first psuk, part of the psuk, Kaerets, Totzie Tzimcha, that he says that comes without, that's like what grows by itself. Chagin Israel Tatzmiach talks about two kinds of sowing. We learned the Mamer. And Kein Hashem Tzmiach Tzedakah Tehila, that talking about the entire time of Seres Yemei Tshuva. Let's see inside. So we have this ru'eho, the two types. Chagino, like a garden, zru'eho, that which you sow, a plural. The two sowing this ru'eho, tatzmiach. But it's a leimar b'kedusha hanimsheches al yidei ha-mitzvahs. That is through the mitzvahs. When you sow, shenikras zriya. That is called sowing. Kimeshe kosuf. Zereya tzedakos matzmiach yeshuas. So you see that the mitzvahs are called, this is actually in the davening, we say, Zereya tzedakos matzmiach yeshuas, that when you do the tzedakos, sowing tzedakos means sowing mitzvahs. All mitzvahs are called tzedakos. You sow mitzvahs and then you grow yeshuas. So what does it mean, sowing zru'el tatzmiach, that it grows? Sha'azriya is tata. When you sow, you are arousing from below. You are initiating in the ground an arousal. And then when it grows, that's the response. That's the arousal from above that came through your Yisarus that you're growing. Marshal. So what's the example from this level? To what we're saying, that the grow, So over there too, we say he placed him in Gan Eden to work it and to guard it. And the Medrash says that love the Zuramach mitzvah say to work it means by doing the 248 mitzvahs. So here we're saying that the same thing is mitzvahs are being sown. That's what you do in the Gan Eden. You're sowing it. What is the example? So what is the comparison of this sowing, which the way we grow things, to the mitzvahs being sown in the ground? Basically what we want to say is over there that you see that from a small kernel, a very physical kernel, which that kernel doesn't have no taste, it doesn't have no smell. You put it in the ground, you get a sweet tree, you get an apple tree, you get great fruit. That means that is an example that from a Maisa HaMitzvahs, which is a very physical act, and yet you create this beautiful light in Keser, in the highest of Madregas. You see, in vividly Shahazera v'Hagarin, Einam be'erech liyis mehem tzmicha rabba kol kach b'tzad atzma. They are not really in a connection that something great should grow from them on their own. So it's not that little kernel is growing it. There is a power of growth that is in the ground, which Hashem put in the 10 sayings. Mamer, there's a saying, Tachi Horis Dasha. Shehu mibechinas malchus, the malchus dasiya. What is the power of the tzemeach that's in the ground? The level of malchus dasiya, that energy is in the ground. That's the power for growth. The koyach hatzemeach hazeh hu bechinas koyach hiyuli. It's a power of potential. In other words, there's a power hidden in the ground. If you're going to sow something, then it's going to grow. The power is there all the time. It's a potential power. It has a potential to grow all types of delights and tasty food. So what is the garden, which is not be'erech at all to the fruit? So what is the seed? That seed that is sown is only to elevate the mayim nukvim. That's the feminine water, the sarusa delatata. So that is lahamshich mikoyach hatzemeach ha'iyuli, to draw down from that potential power for growing, which is in the ground. Latzmiach minza proti. So now it's going to grow this particular type, kifi hagarin hanizra, as the seed that is sown. So how does the earth have this power? Because the beginning is tied, stuck in the end. So which means in the very gashmistic and the very low kernel, in the ground, which is the doimim, is hidden the great force of the Ein Sof, of the Malchus Asiya, the power, the Koyach HaYul to grow everything. Over there it says, Umare Koycha v'yicholta b'soifa ha'ofor ha'matzmiach tomid yesh me'ayin chulu ayin shom. Ki hinei nire b'chush, okay, ba'koyach ha'kein hu inyan ma'isa ha'mitzvahs. So this is the example of those act of mitzvahs. This is the idea, Zorei Tzedakos. Shekol ma'aseh tzedakah, all act of charity. V'chein kol hamitzvos, and also really we're talking about all mitzvahs. And nikroim b'shem tzedakah. They are called also by tzedakah. Is nimshalo lizriya, is equated to zriya to zor. Shagarin ein bo yireyach v'tayim klal, just like the seed doesn't have any smell, no taste at all. V'kach, and likewise, kol ma'aseh mitzvahs, all acts of mitzvahs, hemuluboshim b'dvarim gashmim, they're dressed up in physical matters. So, how does that have a connection to bring down the great energies and lights and hamshochas and the oiris, the imkolze, and yet, notwithstanding that they are physical, heim b'chinas halohas man, the shoydish neshamas Yisrael, they bring up that isarusa dilatata, that feminine water, to the root of neshamas Yisrael, which is shehi b'chinas eretz halyoina. You're sowing it in the supreme land, which is Malchus de Atzilus. Shabon is Roima mitzvahs. Over there, the mitzvahs are sown. So, notwithstanding that they're physical, but these mitzvahs are sown in the level of the Oretz Halyon and Malchus. And through that, Zerei Tzedakah is Matzmiach Yeshuas. There is a revelation of the Ein Sof Baruch Hu. I know through the fact that in this Eretz Elyon, in the level of Malchus, has the power to grow. And the reason why he has the power to grow, the end is tied to the beginning. Because Malchus is rooted in Keser. That's the Tchila. Malchus is the end, but the Soif is rooted in the Tchila in Keser. And the Keser, Keser Uvichinas, Mikoir Hataynugim. Over there, that's the source of all the delights. By kol mitzvah nimtzmach gilui oineg elyim befrat. Through every mitzvah, you grow a revelation of Supreme Elyon and a specific shumokar mitzvah zu, which is the source of this mitzvah. This is the delight, like the fruit that grows from the tree, the tasty, delicious. That's the tainug that the mitzvah reveals in the source of that mitzvah, and that is all comes down into the level of Malchus. Right, the apostle Aboyim Yashrish Yaakov, the apostle Kisavoyu El Haaretz, Bishov Haaretz, the Begeres HaKodesh, Divra Maschil, Zerei Tzedakos. Okay, so now we explained generally what's the idea of sowing, how you sow something very material, very on comparison to what grows from it, yet that's the hisoidus, that's called zriyah. What is the two kinds of zriyahs? Chagina zru'el and bezriyahs. This is talking about the two sowings. It is the intention of the mitzvah, and then there is the act of the mitzvah itself. The intent of the mitzvah, who has zriyah, when the kavan of the mitzvah, that is when you're sowing to grow that the light of the Supreme in the upper level of Gan Eden. Sheshom meir b'chinas mitzvah bina. There it has level of bina. Mitzvah atzmo he has zriyah latzmiach men agilu b'Gan Eden atachton. But the mitzvah itself is in Gan Eden atachton. That's already in Yitzira. The first in the brief that Shaboy meir b'chinas malchus, in which malchus shines. By Mashakosu Be'inyan Gan Eden HaTachton Ve'elyin, V'seiv Tivra Maschil, Ve'ata Yigdol Nokoy Chad. So those are the three Chaginas Ru'eha. But the pasuk starts off Kikaretz, Karet Teishchet Simcha. That's the third level. That is when people do mitzvahs by rote, without any intention. Commotion is has been explained above. Kain Adnai Havaya Yatzmiach Stakot Hilo. Then we say the Eibishter should grow the tzedakah tehillah. That is the special revelation that comes to Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. Shemubchinas Hamelech Hakodesh, B'chinas Kedushos Sheman Kedushas Chapur. As we said before, from the level of the Ein Sof, from the level of Atik. Derech HaMevur b'Sifra Ditzniusa b'Zoyar Truma Kuf Ayin Zayin Aleph. So there it says B'Hai Zimna at this time, which is the time. That's what we're talking about. So at this time, Hashem Elikim Adna Havaya Ata Chaloisa Laharis says Avducha is God L'Chol. So on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, Hashem, Adonai Hashem, begin to show of the God. Pirish, Atach Eloiso. So we mean you started, because over here we're saying Atach Eloiso, it started with the Sarusa de Leila from above. It didn't come Atach Eloiso, you started it. It didn't come as a Sarusa de Leila from the Sarusa de Latato. But it came from Isarusa de Leila, which is higher than the Isarusa de Leila that comes from Isarusa de Tata. It's from a place the Isarusa de Tata can't reach them. Upirish Atach Eloise B'chin Isarusa de Leila Vad. Meshikosu Bakamachar Barichas Haposik Vaschanam Chulu Einsha. He B'chinas Kedushosi Chulana. And that's the level of Kedushosi. As we mentioned, Kibchinas, Sarusa Leila Zu, this is Sarusa Leila is Kimoisha B'Tchilas Habriya. Just like in the beginning of the creation. It's Ki Chafetz Chesed, who over there it didn't come from Sarusa Leila, came from Hashem's Chafetz Chesed, that Oldam Shachas came. That happens under Rosh Hashanah at that time. There's no Surus Leila comes from a higher place. It comes from Surus Leila Tzadatzva. That's why this level is revealed on Rosh Hashanah. That is the Zayin Zikonim Rishon. That's the level in which we say that Hashem is Chafetz Chesed. On the day of Rosh Hashanah, on Rosh Hashanah, so because the Eibishter started off Lechatchila by Chafetz Chesed, that's how the Eibishter created the world. There was no Adam, there was no people, there was no Isarusa L'Tata to be murdered. It came Milmaila. So every Rosh Hashanah, there is a renewal of that level. That's why the level is the Atach Eloisa. So Bahai Zimna Atach Eloisa. This is what it means. At this time, you started it. At this time, at Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, that's the time when Hashem starts it off. And that's what we say also the name Adnai Hashem, Ad Hashem Elikim. So Adnai refers to Rosh Hashanah, level of master, level of Malchus, and Havaya B'Nikud Elikim is Yom Kippur. Kishem Adnai Meir B'Rosh Hashanah. The name of Adnai. All this was explained at length in the previous Mamer and the Mamer. Tatzmiach. So Kishem Adnai Meir B'Rishon Kiresh Shoshana Hu Binyan HaMalchus Shebchinas Shem Adnai. Rosh Hashanah is the time when we start building the Malchus, and Malchus, the Shem Malchus is the name of Adnai. Shehi B'chinas Shem Adnai. Why is the name Adnai? Because Adnai is Dina, the Malchus of Dina. Adnai is the same letter as Dina. A Malchus of Adnai is the law of the Malchus. That personified, that is Malchus, is the judgment. And that's why Oisius Adnai, the word Dina is Oisius Adnai. So that is Rosh Hashanah. Then you have a Shem Havaya B'Nikud Elikim. Ubchinas Bina, Shubchinas Yom Kippurim Eimaylah. That is the level of Bina, which is Yom Kippur, which is the supreme aim of Bina Vatzilus. Shalachein Yom Kippurim Ein Bo Yachilu Shtila K'moi Ha'olam Haba She'ein Bo Yachilu Shtila. That's the comparison. There's no eating and drinking, and that is similar to the world to come. Like when there is no in Gan Eden, when there is no eating or drinking. And Olam Haba B'chinas Bina. So Yom Kippur, which you don't eat and drink, is the same as Olam Haba because it comes from Bina. And by the person says, Kain Adnai Havai Yatzmiach Tzoko Dila, which means so Shehain Beis Shemas, the Adnai Havaya, the two names of Adnai Havaya, Ato Achiloisa, they are starts off Surusad Leila. So this is actually the Yom Tzarachim. We know that are revealed on Rosh Hashanah and Kippur. Says Metshuva Diksiv. The Pasuk says Vayaver Hashem al Pono. What is Vayaver Hashem? Pirush Oiver Milmailo Nibchinas Pono. That he goes from higher than the level of Pono. Vayaver Hashem al Pono. Higher. The Hainu Nibchinas Atik. So when the Eibishter Pono, that's the level you'd give me Tzarachim. That's the level of Arich. But the level of Vayaver Hashem is the level of Atik, which is higher than Nibchinas Atik. Shal Ma'il Marich Ampin. Mishom Nimshochim, you give me Tzarachim. If they come, you give me Tzarachim. Iker his galuzu who been illa the Yom Kippur. The main time when it revealed is during the closing on Yom Kippur. Sibas, Amshochas, Avodah She'ever upon him. Why is the reason for Zamshocha going upon him? That's from level Chavos Chesed. Rosh Hashanah, Maschil, that's from the higher level. It's Rusad Leila. Kedushasi, the Mailam of Kedushasi. Rosh Hashanah, Maschil, B'chinas Gilu Yizeh. There it starts, that revelation. Shubchinas Tchilas Masecho. It's the Tchilas Masecho. Hashem starts it off. It's Hashem doing it on his own. Pirush Tchil Masech Yinat Chaloisa. Benigmar, Ben Ila the Yom Kippurim. And that's concluded by Nila Yom Kippur. Here you use the word over. Same thing is when we do the blessing of the mitzvahs. Over there we say Mevorech Aleim over La'asi Yosem. So you do before or Pirush over. Over here also the meaning over Gamkein al derech hanal is also similar to what we said before. The Pirush in the meaning of Vayaver Hashem al Pono. Cool. The Ritzayin Leimar She'ever Milmailo Mibchinas Asi Yosem. That over La'asi Yosem, it goes on top, it goes higher than just doing the mitzvah atzma of the mitzvah of the mitzvah itself. The Hainu Mibchinas Makiv Shul Mailo Mitzvah atzma Shul Mibchinas Pnimi the Makiv Baruch. The light that comes from the mitzvah itself is an Pnimi. Because we say Ramachi Baruch the Malko, it's like the Pnimis. And this they get Ober La'asi Yosem through the Brocha, you get the level of Oyer Makif. This can be ill שהשורש ברכס המצווה נמשך גם כמבחינת סרוס הלילה, דעת החילוס. It also comes from the level of סרוס הלילה, which is דעת החילוס. זהו עניין המלך הקודש, שאומרים בעשרת ימי תשובה דק. That's what we say המלך הקודש on the 10 days of תשובה. והנה, פירוש קודש בבוב, מלך הקודש. קודש בבוב, היינו המשוכו שהדגימו תיקוני דיקנים. The extending the 13 strands of the beard, שהם בחינס, ידגימו לצרחמים, שהם בחינס יודין וובין. Those are both Yudin and Vovim. Shasaides, Hein, Bechinas, Vovim. The here is the Vov. And that is the level of Yud. So you have a Yud within the Vov. So Vov, you have Yud in the Vov. So you bring down the Gimel Tikkun Dikna. That's the pshat of Kodesh. But Shemrim Hamelech HaKodesh. When you say Hamelech HaKodesh, so we're trying to say to you that your Mamshech Hainushanimshach Ha'oir B'Yimut Tikkun Dikna. That means that the light comes into the 13th Tikkun Dikna Mebchinas Malchus Ein Sof. From Malchus Ein Sof. That's the Hamelech HaKodesh. Hamelech HaKodesh is the Amshocha from Atik, from Malchus Ein Sof. Shubechinas Atik the Atzilus. Shalom Ayla Marachampa, which is high Narachampa. Umishom Meir Ha'oir HaNimshech Yudgimel Tikkun Dikna. And from there, from the Atik, comes down. That's Hamelech HaKodesh. From the level of Malchus Ein Sof, from the level of Atik, which is higher than Arik, much higher than Arik. There he comes into the Yudgimel Tikkun Dikna. Zo Hamelech HaKodesh, and this Hamelech HaKodesh, V'hu HaHamshocha Mibchinas Kedushosi Shalamayla Medushazchem Kinal. That is from the Kedusha that is out of the Shazchem. Okay, let's leave it over here.